Some think he's just a little short and a big pervert. But for those in the know, we'll be discussing one of the most underrated shonen MCs, and how he may just have one of the best final and tags of all time.
Oh, brother, whoa, now. You got too much dip on your chip.
If you ask someone what their favorite things are about Seven Deadly Sins, 200% of the time they're gonna mention the characters. This unique cast is one of the biggest strengths of the series since the beginning. The Sins get such quality development. Nakaba spends a whole series letting you know their motives and backstories and putting them through troubling scenarios. But in the first saga, you don't really learn a lot about Meliodas' character. So I feel like a lot of people don't get him early on, is what I would say if I was defending it. I just thought he was badass. He held a lot of mystique, like an MC with a broken sword. That's dope. And he had that never-aging skin. But once the Ten Commandments saga started, we started to get to know a little bit more about my mans. Like what happened immediately after the Sins were framed, and Merlin stealing a majority of his power. And also found his sacred treasure. Merlin, you wouldn't happen to have any other sacred treasures, would you? Oh. Asshole. Hey Merlin, you wouldn't happen to find my wallet, did you? Already canceled the cards, you fucking bitch. Piece by piece, all the big questions about Meliodas are answered for the most part. Right before he's killed by Esterosa, we learn more about his place among the commandments and his defection. During the few short chapters Meliodas is dead, we get flashbacks of what happened following the destruction of Danafall. Him meeting Zaratras, or Zaratrash, because he comes back and does nothing. That was terrible. Did I write that? Shit, we see Meliodas join the Kingdom of Leones in the formation of the Seven Deadly Sins. We learn so much about him over the course of the Ten Commandments saga. But shortly after, Meliodas regains his powers, and Escanor joins the present story. While the chapters were great virtually every week, it felt like for a bit the series was kinda losing direction, with the Ten Commandments becoming less intimidating. But the opposite was happening for Meliodas. When he's revived, the scariest thing at this point was what's going on with our MC. And that brings us to Meliodas' heel turn. Our main Care Bears of Shonen is supposed to be immune to that, except like in Yu-Gi-Oh! That's some whiny Dotag shit. Except when Meliodas does it, that's badass. It was a very necessary shift in focus for the series. It was epic to see him finally gain control of his wrath back in Istar, and it would have been nice to see him fight more at that level of power, but in the very next arc, having him get lynched by the 9 remaining commandments and killed is to this day one of the best plot twists in a series with more twists than M. Night Shyamalan, Playing Twister, in a pretzel factory. Play that shit.
Fight back, nigga! Fight back, nigga!
Yeah, that's about what the fuck happened. But anyways, it wasn't enough to just explain every mystery about Meliodas' past. The more we learned about Meliodas, we realized he does have some depth. We get to see different sides of him a lot, but he always snaps right back to that happy-go-lucky demeanor, which makes his character at times come off as really static, especially in comparison to other characters in the series. But my point is, Meliodas, pre-death, was really in need of a satisfying change, something to actually flesh out his character arc, and Nakaba was finally taking advantage and adding to those layers. Now that's not to say that Meliodas reverting to his old self is what his entire character arc is about, because it's really just a part. As we know, Meliodas' goal is to break the curse on him and Elizabeth, so even though he didn't want to revert to his old ways, at the same time it was a means to an end, which I'll elaborate on in a bit. Now I just need to recap a few points in the story that lead into the theme of this video. Following the Holy War flashback arc, the character arc of Meliodas really starts to show in two ways. The first being Meliodas reverting to his original self, pretty much emotionless, and the other happening simultaneously in Purgatory. So Meliodas is basically existing as two separate entities. Merlin later realizes the link between Hawk and Purgatory. This is where Ban is made relevant to the story again. He's the only one who could possibly survive in Purgatory, so they have him go in and attempt to find Meliodas, who is wandering hopelessly in there. Ban finds Meliodas. There's a lot of nakedness going on there. They meet Hawk's brother, and Meliodas starts to get sentimental, thinking about his relationship with Zeldris. Basically, right as they're about to exit Purgatory, the Demon King pops up like,
"Stupid, I'm not gonna let you get the chance."
The Demon King's ability is broken, and they lose a lot. Meliodas starts to lose hope, something we've never seen. He contemplates staying in Purgatory and that Elizabeth might actually be better off if he did. And while that is a change from his regular character, it's not growth appropriate to the character arc when you look at all the pieces. This is the second time where the Demon King proves to be the only being who can keep Meliodas from doing what he wants. Him blocking the exit for Purgatory practically acts as a metaphor for the control he always had over Meliodas. That fear of the Demon King led to Meliodas' defection and all subsequent events, not just the Holy War, but virtually the entire story of Nanatsu no Taizai, are a result of him not confronting the Demon King on his own terms, and his desire to be with Elizabeth just not being handled in the right way. To put it simply, not only is the Demon King a tyrant that needed to be stopped, but his direct influence is the reason for the story taking place. Now, I couldn't even convince myself that the Demon King is a compelling character, but being in a genre where the final arc is almost always watery shit, the Demon King does deserve a little bit of credit for not being an ass-pull villain. The final villain for Meliodas is one that's closely tied to him, one that's actually a great fit for the protagonist. The final fight here is personal and not a battle of ideals. Meliodas defected fearing he'd one day be forced to kill Elizabeth, and as the #1 candidate for Demon King, he should have done what he's doing now at the end of the series, rising to the level of king and taking the throne. Meliodas' inability to do so got him deemed a traitor, incurred the wrath of both gods instead of just one, started the Holy War, and destroyed the relationship with his brother. And Zeldris is actually a major part of Meliodas' character arc. He was someone who would have been directly helped instead of hurt if Meliodas had acted. Before he escapes Purgatory, helping Zeldris was never an idea or concern that was mentioned. Instead, it was always just on site with those two. But when the Demon King possesses Zeldris, it shows a flashback where Meliodas did offer for Zeldris to bring Gelda, which Zeldris responds negatively, because Meliodas himself realizes he wasn't taking into consideration Gelda had to reside in the underworld, being a vampire, which shows Meliodas was in a really self-centered line of thinking, which we kind of see him grow from in his long stay in Purgatory. Back when Meliodas used to spend day and night on the battlefield, it's really all he knew. It's really all any of the commandments knew from being under the rule of the Demon King. After he met Elizabeth, he just cared about getting his dick wet. But post-Purgatory Meliodas holds a different kind of resolve. Now he admits he's been selfish, and I like that Nakaba included that in the story, because if you look at everything his actions have caused, there's no denying it. Although his goal was to be with Elizabeth, Meliodas' character arc is about the things he failed to do, hence how many times he failed to save her reincarnations and to be there for Zeldris. Nanatsu no Taizai is a redemption story, not just for Meliodas but for all the sins. Thanks for watching my video. All praise the sun. Peace.